It seems only appropriate that when I want to film a video about how sloppy my coloring book is, I've had a car alarm going off near me for probably 2 hours. At this point, I just hope my fan blocks it out. This is The Enchanted Forest by Joanna Basford, and I wanted to do this because so much of what inspires me online is watching the process, and that's especially something I've always loved about Yang Haiying's channel, is she shows her full process, all of her successes, all of her experiments, everything that maybe didn't work out. And so I have a really messy coloring book because I like to experiment a lot, and I'm trying to push myself to not always have everything be about perfection. So here we go. So first of all, we can start off by looking at the back, which has some shmush and some other shmush. I don't even know what that is. Starting from the beginning, I started coloring this in and gave up. I decided I didn't like the texture. That taught me that I didn't like the texture, so that was a lesson. This is okay. It's not great. This is when I was trying to be very, very perfect about things, and it turned out all right. But there's a lot in this book that, just based on my own neuroses, made things become necessarily complicated, like every little skull or insect on a page where I would try to color, I wanted to black them out because I didn't want them to be part of my enchanted forest because I don't find them relaxing. It necessarily made for some very messy pages. But we'll get to that part later. This is where I was sort of fed up with the outer parts and wanted to try using watercolor. I had some colors left over on a palette and I just wanted to use them up. So I thought, ooh, I'll do some layering, mixed media. The unfortunate thing about that is it did change the texture of the page, and instead of making it easier to layer colors, it made it harder. It may still turn out okay. I have like this vision of this kind of coffee color, tea color, like old paper and whatever, but you can see where I was using this fun little Japanese calligraphy pen that has a very tiny fine brush tip, and it was fun to color it in, but it doesn't look very pretty at all. But it is representative of a fun time. So here was more of trying to use up watercolor and see what it does to the background. I mean, I think the effect is kind of interesting. I just don't think it's pretty. And here I use Sharpies because I thought it's very satisfying to fill a large area with color, similar to the watercolor. I wanted to do mixed media and layering. It does also change the texture of the page to me, and it wasn't very satisfying to try to put wax over that, like my wax Prismacolor pencils. This was one I have spent, I don't even know how many hours were spent on these pages. And I think there's good things about it and also not great things about it. So here was where I learned about the importance of slow layers on a background. Here I had not learned that yet. I was doing very, very thick layers. I think it makes it look not so great. It doesn't blend very well. I didn't have a lot of patience on the trees, so I used a watercolor pencil just to fill them in. I had an idea of using a silver or gold gel pen, but I wasn't sure how I wanted to do it, so I tried it out in a few ways. Not really pleased how any of it came out, but it was fun to try. This was another one where my whole point was, this is not going to be a pretty page. I mean, in a perfection sort of way. It was going to be blocks of colors. I used junky gel pens that I had. I used some random markers. I used the really thick Prismacolors that go on, and if you don't do it lightly, it becomes a thick wall of wax. I just went all out on that, so that's what I did. These pages I haven't done yet. There's actually a lot of pages I haven't done, even though I've had this book for quite a long time. I'd started out doing something pretty neat here in terms of precision. It wasn't wonderful, but it was okay. But then I did the little watercolor splotches. I was trying to do some grass texture, trying to do some wind texture. And in wonderfully sloppy style, my camera storage file got too full, so I just emptied it. And we shall continue. More pages I haven't done. Here is a lot of exploration that I did. This was one of the first times I tried to do watercolor in this book. I was using a water pen, so I was putting pigment straight from the pan right onto the page. I like the way it came out. I also was using some of those Japanese calligraphy pens on the edges of the leaves and the trees. I might have done some pencil, I think, up here, and then I thought, no, those colors just don't go so well. I was trying to echo this up there, but I don't know how I feel about that. Here you can see more of the starting process where I kind of block out huge swathes of color, and I do it kind of in a messy way. I don't even bother with the lines because I kind of imagine I end up going back with a pencil and somehow making it look perfect. That might never happen here. So that was a pretty colorful exploration. Haven't done these pages. First of all, this one has a huge bug in it, and so does this one, and I still haven't found the best way to censor out the bugs for myself. I have found some of the Sharpie metallic pens can be good for that, but I'll be showing soon some of my other attempts. So here I did a pretty simplistic coloring job, and then just for the background I wanted to fill it with color, so I just did lots of watercolor. Here too, lots of watercolor. This one has a lot of intricate little spaces, and I think it requires a lot more patience than I have. And again, bug. Here was one of the first pages I did, and I kind of built on it over time, where I wanted to explore different ways of using color and coloring and blending and seeing which combinations work well together. I haven't had a new idea that I wanted to try out yet, so I haven't, but that one's still going. I think this was one of the first pages I colored in with my first maybe 5 Prismacolors, and it actually made the colors pretty harmonious, but yeah, I just kind of drew a big circle around it and then messily filled in the back. I like that page anyway. I was learning how to use Prismacolors. This one I did pretty neatly. It's not as sloppy. Here, there's a really big bug that I have to figure out how to get rid of, but I do like the way this came out. I was trying some of the things I had tested out on those little acorns, trying out that kind of style here, and I did that similarly here, and on the leaves up there, and on that little door, so I'll probably return to that. Okay, so this was the first time I tried to really censor out a bug. It wasn't even a huge bug. I think it was some kind of caterpillar over here, and maybe some kind of spidery thing over there. So first attempt was using crayon. I thought, I think that was my first attempt. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do multicolor background. You can sort of see it on the edges. Of all crayon, but that didn't really cover it, and it looked really, really, really sloppy. And so then I tried, I think, black crayon or black colored pencil, and that was not very effective. And then I went back with black ink. So many things, and even this part is just a mess of colors. I really did not think too hard on this one. I mean, what I was thinking about wasn't the actual fun part of coloring. This one was fun to do. I used the Japanese calligraphy pens because they're just so satisfying to feel that little brush painting these little sections, and just a little bit of pencil, and I filled in the rest of this with gel pen, which was really fun. This was watercolor that did seem to work, and since I had that, I think it's basically India ink still going with me, I figured, oh, why not just fill in the whole back section? So that's what I did. This here is done by my nephew, so I think this is very impressive. He's about 4.5, and he really kept in the lines, perhaps more than I did on some of these pages, so it's a good job. He also did this page and discovered the electric eraser, and this page, which I had no idea, there's no way to cover that bug, so fine. Here I did all watercolor pencil, and I just decided to show the texture. They're not really good at blending, the particular ones I have. I can't remember the brand. And here I just pretended the bug wasn't there. But I had fun with the colors. Here was another page, I like the acorn one, where I wanted to try to explore different coloring attempts, and I got a little bored with it, but tried it out. More pages to do in the future. More in the future. This was more of the watercolor pencils, and then I came in with the big brush, trying to just do big sections of color with the blue, and then I realized, it kind of looks like wind, that's fun, and that's why I used it on the other section where I wanted it to look like wind. So that was a fun thing to discover. Here, I just felt like coloring huge sections very intensely with a mostly solid color. I did it during a train ride, and it kept me busy for at least a couple hours, and then later on, this was probably what was left on my palette one day, on my watercolor palette, and I just felt like filling in the background. Did not do this one. I don't know why I just filled in that. Here, my intention was to make it look like children's coloring, but try to make it a little more complex. I wanted to do some like light shading to dark shading, and I did that for all the little tree houses coming up, and I wanted the trees themselves to look like interesting melds of color. I was thinking about the color wheel as I did it, trying to have interesting combinations going on. So that was an attempt I think was successful in that I learned some stuff, and for the other parts I decided to neutral kind of gray. So that is the full version of that page. This was a messy learning page. After watching Art at Fadil's first video where I saw him mention using baby oil as a mixing blender, I guess, I tried it on this, and ultimately I think it did work. For a while though, it just kind of smelled like diapers and felt very sticky, but now it doesn't feel sticky at all, so it does come off on my finger. Yeah, so I started this pretty neatly. I did this pretty neatly. I did not have a lot of patience on the outer part. I think this is watercolor and then going over watercolor, but you can see here where the Sharpie bronze really can cover up a section pretty quickly. This was, I think, using gel pens as watercolor, which was inspired by Yang Haiying's videos. I've seen her do that a lot. It's kind of fun to see the water pen going over just gel pen ink, and it gives a real watercolor effect. I think the outer part is actual watercolor. More pages I have not done. Not done. This one started out neat, and then my patience faded over time. This was a watercolor pencil, and I tried to do it kind of neatly, but there's so many bugs in the background. So let's look at the different ways I tried to block those out. I used marker, and I think Prismacolor, and yeah, like the thickest Prismacolors. And it didn't fully succeed in that way, but it is very colorful, so that was fun. Here, I used more of my alcohol inks, my gold gel pen, my bronze Sharpie, and the India ink on the background. I had the inks out, and they're just so fun to watch them kind of smush together. I think there was like a dragonfly over here, so this was most of my experimentation. I was saying most of my experimentation comes from my desire to omit bugs from this book. And so here, this was probably my start for, I think I had originally tried to do kind of a glowy neon green pencil thing, but then I had all this ink, and I do like the effect. I mean, it's not a very precise effect, but it was fun. Kind of like here, I used this page to just use all the leftover bits of watercolor or ink I had, and then filled it in with the calligraphy pen. And I mean, the colors go together. It's kind of messy, but I do like the colors go together. I will probably never do this page. Here is another case where I wanted to fill in blocks of color with Sharpie. It was very satisfying. The result isn't exciting, but it was fun to do. This was one I did with watercolor pencils. I was thinking of a friend of mine, one of my best friends who I really loved, who recently died. I was coloring in these eggs thinking of her because she just loved eggs and thought they were beautiful, and so this is sort of a special page for me. I later came back with leftovers of watercolor and filled it in, and ultimately I don't think that looks bad. This was probably the result of more of the watercolor where I just filled in whole page sections and then later came back and tried to find ways to make it look nice. This was some Prismacolors. Yeah, I think here I took some time to try to do shading for the Prismacolors. I didn't really try to do very concentrated color there. This was more of the Japanese calligraphy pen. Here was another attempt at using gel pens as watercolors, except these were sort of metallic. I tried to add little dots to add some texture. You know, it's fine. These are very intricate. I haven't figured out what to do with those yet. This was one of my earlier ones I did with the watercolor pencils. I was trying to be very precise. I think it came out fine. This is the page that you guys have been watching me color in. I recently, today, just filled in more of this background, trying to do it in color sections, and I'm going to build slowly on top of it. So I do hope to have more of that done and posted soon. Is that the end? No, there's still just like a sloppy use of color here. So there's that. Nothing in those pages. And yeah. I think I even crossed out little mentions of bugs because I didn't want to look at it. So yeah, this is my Enchanted Forest. I'd love to see everyone else's experimentations, what you learned from it, even just like talk about a time that you did some coloring and we're doing something else and then learn something kind of fun from it. That's fun to hear about. So I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening. Thank you for watching. If you like this, please click like and please subscribe. Sending you all my best. Goodbye.